Hi everyone, welcome to Sabir and this special training series which covers all the broadcast media. I'm very happy and glad to introduce to you Adobe Premiere Pro Creative Cloud. And what you will be learning in this series is everything that you need to know if you want to start editing. Maybe you are just a starter in video editing and you might have used other softwares and you are raring to start with Premiere Pro, which offers a lot more flexibility than any other softwares. You are most welcome, and I would highly recommend that you go through the initial lectures, because here I'm going to talk about the fundamental of video editing and why it is important to know those fundamentals. When you get a roadblock when it comes to troubleshooting, your understanding about the basic fundamentals of how non-linear editing works is going to come a lot handy. So without further ado, let me just go through and tell you what all I'll be covering in this entire lecture series. You will find different videos. Maybe one particular segment could be broken up into 4 to 5 different videos. I will also be sharing with you certain source files which you can use to edit, or otherwise you can always work with your own media. You should be able to apply whatever I'm teaching you in this particular course. The first thing I'll be covering is what is the production workflow. When you are getting into video editing, you should have an ideal understanding of how the workflow happens. You are in the post-production phase, what happens when you get the media, and where this work is basically progressing. That's very important. Understanding assets, what kind of files you're getting to edit, and a basic understanding of video codecs. Very important, particularly when you're into editing. Then we'll get into the traditional 3-point editing, which is the most fundamental way of editing. Of course, we'll learn about how to trim clips and also certain advanced editing techniques. Now, these are the things which actually makes your work flow much faster. When you are in a timeline, you are thinking faster, obviously, than you're editing. It is to match up to your brain activity, I guess. That's why you need certain advanced tools to make your workflow much faster. Similarly, after you have done your basic edit in your plain cut or your rough cut, you should be able to understand how you can customize certain transitions and effects, which you'll definitely be applying to your edit. And a good understanding of color correction. Now, we will have an option by which you can actually also learn speed grade in a further broadcast training series. But for now, we will limit ourselves to the basic color correction techniques that is available in Premiere Pro. They're not bad, they're pretty advanced, in fact. You'll also learn understanding of audio, because when you're working on a project, you'll be working with different kinds of audio. You'll be working with the ambience track that will come with your video footage. You have to incorporate some music tracks, sound effects, all of it I'll be covering in the audio primer. And of course, how you will export the file. It depends upon your project specification, your client, your faculty who wants you to export the file in a certain format. So understanding codecs is equally important, and that knowledge will come into play when we go to export. But what happens after project gets over? Very important, because with the issues that we have with the storage space nowadays, what do you do with so much space? Okay, so much space is not so much when you actually start working on an HD project and you have a 1 TB hard drive or a 3 TB hard drive. You need to know how to archive projects and safeguard them for future work. Most importantly, while we are learning to do edit, we'll also learn these different aspects of editing. Editing is not the same for different formats. For example, if you're editing a news story, you need to edit, and your sense of editing needs to be a little different. If you're editing a feature story, if you're editing a basic continuity fiction scene, similarly if you're just doing a music montage. Now, the whole idea of this lecture is not to teach you how to use a software, but also how to learn to do edit. So editing techniques and editing fundamentals is what will be covered along with whatever you're learning with the software. Now let's go to the very beginning, which is the production workflow. Very important for you to understand that when you are editing, you are dealing with different stages of editing. The first stage is obviously getting the footage. So you might get the footage from a recording device, which might include an SD card, a high-speed SD card, which might include a direct transfer from the camera to your hard drive. How that transfer happens, then also you need to be aware of what happens to your file after you have got the file. So you would have probably kept your file in a secondary hard drive. Now, what happens to that file when you bring it to your software? There are two things. One is transcoding. Briefly, if I explain to you, if your file changes when you are importing a file to your editing software, if the format changes, or in other words, what we often use, the codec changes, then we are talking about transcoding. If you work in Final Cut Pro X, you will be probably doing that. You like it or not, but that's what's happening. The best part about Premiere Pro is it lets you edit on its native format. So if you're bringing any kind of footage, the wide variety of formats that Adobe Premiere Pro supports allows you to edit on its native format. That does not mean that you cannot change it while editing or before editing. You can do that. But if you're coming to Premiere Pro, you can be rest assured that you can bring in any kind of footage, any kind of codec, and you will be able to edit on that very codec itself. As I mentioned, in the typical production flow, you also have a process of color correction. So what you see here is actually a logo of DaVinci Resolve, and right now I'm learning that, so I should also be able to provide you expertise on using DaVinci Resolve. It's a free software. You can actually go online and download it. It's great for students. Definitely it will help you a lot in giving a polished look to your final product. When you are talking about files, we often get confused when we are called, okay, I have a MOV, I have an AVI, I have a MPEG-4, are they all the same? Well, your understanding of file formats is dramatically going to change if I tell you that the files that we know, does not matter what file format it is, they are just container files. Imagine them to be like a box, and you have certain kinds of files inside. The box is called a container file. So if I give you a file which is a MOV file, and I give you an AVI file, and I ask you which file is better, you cannot tell me for certainty because you don't know what codec is inside the file. Immaterial what file you use, a file is defined by its codec, not by its container. Of course, you have certain platform compatibility. If you're using MOV, it's more compatible with Apple. If you're using AVI, it's more compatible with Windows. If you're using MPEG-4, then it is more compatible with web, with iPods, or on your cell phone. It is more likely that they will run without much trouble. But believe me, container files are just container files. Some container files obviously has more capability and more capacity than other container files, and some container files can only store certain codecs. Yes, that is there, but please don't confuse file format. When we say file format, what we mean is that we're talking about codec. A codec is the process of compression. So when you get a video and audio all put together, it goes through a certain compression. It is given a particular shape. That's the shape, as you can see, is from what we say as encapsulation. Okay, so codec stands for compressor decompressor. So a particular video and audio footage is compressed into a codec and is stored inside a container file, as you can see from this entire process. So codecs can be hardware based or software based. You might encounter both of them at different stages, at different areas and different workflow, but codecs are after all codecs. So you know a particular file by its codec, not by its container file. How about quality? Okay, one codec is better than another. How much better? Well, there are two kinds of quality we're talking about. The codecs can be either lossy or lossless, and they either degrade the image quality or leave it unaffected. Most compressions that you see in the market and you encounter the most are lossy, but they are so well done that it is hardly visible to the naked eye. But having said that, for different kinds of projects and for different kinds of output requirement, you will choose a specific codec. So it all depends upon your understanding of what the client wants, what the client needs, and accordingly you will choose a specific codec. How your media is recorded on is equally important. So all these factors put together will decide on what do you want for your codec. Now, if we talk about codecs, let me give an example of how many codecs is supported in Premiere Pro. And that we will cover in the next lecture.